Wayfair gets accused of selling children. Violence erupts around the country, including some deaths, as we will see coming along in here. Does Donald Trump listen to this show? We'll talk about what he's planning on doing later on this week. And Rush Limbaugh is the one who restores my faith in humanity? Stranger things have happened. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning and welcome to Contemporary. I'm Jay Edgar. I want to touch on just a couple things before we get into any of the news or even my shameless commercial that I have at the beginning of the show. First off, I do want to point out something that was talked about in the live chat yesterday while I was doing my garden update, and this is to my good friend Ron Helton. And Ron, all of my milk jugs, I took my little pocket knife, my little snap-on pocket knife that desperately needs to be sharpened, and about a half an inch from the bottom of the milk jugs, I poked holes in all four corners of it. So yes, they do have drainage, because I know that they will flood in a hurry and kill out everything. I know that my carnivores have to sit in water all the time, but your food crops can get overwatered, and it makes everything watery. And I'm looking forward to getting the jalapenos off that bush too, because I just had stuffed jalapenos last night. Sausage, onion, cream cheese, and cheese, and they were delicious. So now I'm looking forward to what I can grow on my own. Other thing that I want to touch on today is that I went up and decided to join the world of real writing instruments, and last night it finally came, because Amazon will deliver on Sunday, but I bought myself a real fountain pen. And I like fountain pens. They're awesome. It's nice, it's weighty. It wasn't really expensive for just something to start with, but it's something that I would definitely collect and get more of, so yeah, it's a real fountain pen. It's got cartridges, it's blue ink, and that's what I'm going to be using to write the names of everybody who sits down and watches my show throughout the week. It's got a screw on top. That's the only thing I don't like about it, but I'll get used to that as we go. All right, we got a ton to get to today, so we'll stop talking about my hobbies here and go start talking about everything else that happened on in the world. So before we get started, of course, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. Now, we are still not getting the R-rated conservative in the news feed, so we will be working on that. The website is getting a ground-up rebuild right now, so look forward to that here. Look forward to how everything's going. We've got some text issues, which means that I have not been able to post the article from Anna Valtis that he has been waiting to get posted, so that will be coming up here in the near future. It is somewhat timeless because they're still trying to pull this autonomous zone bullshit around the world. So I want to get it up as soon as possible, but still, it's not going to affect the content of it if it waits until the rebuild is over. But on top of that here, I did lie to the Freckles and Brit show, though, because they showed right up in the feed, and I hadn't seen them for a little while. So they're back up in the feed, getting ready to go. Otherwise, we have Stephen Ignoramus, Wyatt Birkenhoff, myself, The Generational Gap, and the R-Rated Conservative is a part of our network, but for whatever reason, they are not showing up in the feed, so we do need to get that fixed as well. So come on over and check us out, grab our swag, and check out all of our shows and our back episodes there. Hey, look, there's the Red Ned Show, episode 2 coming up tonight, so come and check us out over there. All right, before we get into anything, we'll go look at the stocks. And it looks like Friday was actually a fairly good day, up 1.44% over everything else going into the weekend where everybody was getting ready to buy. So people wanted to get their hands on some of the profit from the weekend. Some states are locking down. That's probably preventing that from going too much further and harder. But some states are staying open. Some states realize what they can and cannot do and what they have to work with their legislature for and what has to go to the courts. And some states like mine will not work with their legislature because they can't stand each other. So a bunch of stuff going on there, but we're looking like we're positive today. Let's see what happened in futures over the weekend from Investors Business Daily. Dow Jones today, futures rally as Tesla, Apple, Netflix lead. Pfizer vaccine fast-tracked $17 billion chip deal from Alan R. Elliott. Stock futures rallied Monday following global markets higher, flashing signs of optimism heading into the global second quarter reporting season. Chip stocks were early leaders on a $17 billion takeover deal from AMD. Apple climbed on an orders forecast. Positive vaccine news stirred coronavirus stocks and sent Pfizer to the top of the Dow Jones. Dow Jones futures rumbled 235 points higher, up 0.9%, suggesting an open back on the 26,000 level. S&P 500 futures gained 0.8% above fair value. Nasdaq 100 futures gained 1% on the stock market today, with Maxim Integrated and Tesla leading an early trade. Tesla swept nearly 6% higher after a Sunday tweet from CEO Elon Musk said the company had canceled the company's low-end Model Y due to range concerns. Also on Sunday, Bloomberg reported Tesla trimmed $3,000 from its Model Y prices. Tesla shares surged 10.7% on Friday and are up more than 43% so far in July. Netflix climbed 2.4%, aiming to extend its rally after the 15% rally last week. Netflix stock, an IBD leaderboard listing, is due to report Q2 results late Thursday. Well, hell, people are getting ready to go lock back down again and not do anything for the summer, and Netflix is staying as woke as they possibly can, and just go watch the Black Lives Matter. Fuck the rest of the stuff we have on the site. Go watch the Black Lives Matter stuff because we're super woke. Amazing. And I bitch too much about it because I like Netflix and I like some of the stuff that they have on there. And I don't watch the Black Lives Matter stuff, but they're putting out interesting stuff. I am currently watching a Hallmark series, and I'm not going to out myself and say which one, but it wasn't what I was expecting it to be when I first started watching it. But as soon as that's done, I see this Warrior Nun keep popping up on there, and I'm actually going to go check that out. So there's a lot of good drama on there, and I do like the fact that I pay the money for it. And of course, my parents and my sister enjoy it too, so we'll be going and checking that out here. Pfizer jumped 2% to lead the Dow Jones today. German partner BioNTech rallied more than 5% after the companies announced that jointly developed COVID-19 vaccines. Are they working with Radio Shack on that too to make sure they get that chip in there? Had earned fast track status from the FDA. Among the other coronavirus stocks, Moderna popped 2.6% after Jefferies initiated coverage with a buy rating of about 90 price target. Test kit maker GenMark Diagnostics also advanced 2.6%. Yeah, they're testing in a hurry. They are testing in an absolute hurry. I will give them that. That's part of the reason we're seeing so many cases right now. Of course, keep in mind, it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that people stood shoulder to shoulder in protest for a month and a half at a time over May and June. It has nothing to do with that. But they're testing like crazy. And of course, evil red state. Don't forget about that. PepsiCo popped 2.5% after delivering above forecast revenue and earnings for its second quarter. Chip stocks moved sharply higher after Analog Devices said it would buy Maxim Integrated in a $17 billion all-stock deal. Analog also raised its fiscal quarter 3 target slightly, while Maxim guided fiscal quarter 4 revenue sharply higher. ADI stock rose 2%, Maxim stock soared 18%, the VanEck Vector Semiconductor advanced 2.4%. IBD 50 stock Taiwan Semiconductor surged 2.4% in early action. Taiwan Semiconductor ended extended on Friday after a July 2nd breakout from a cup with handle base. Apple was set to open the week on solid footing with a couple of pieces of news lifting shares 1% on the Dow Jones today. A Digitime article reported that Apple was set to see its MacBook Pro orders rise significantly in late in current quarter, projecting 20% a sequential rise over quarter 2. Apple also received a price target hike from Morgan Stanley, which boosted the target to $419 from $340 and maintained an overweight rating. The analyst raised forecasts for iPhone shipments 6% in 2020 and 3% in 2021, citing improved, I don't know what that word is supposed to be, improvide. Is that a real word? Affordability and aging base and new features. IBD leaderboard stock Apple is extended, closing on 20% above an alternative buy point at $319.79. That was the most 90s thing I could possibly do right there on this show. Yeah, I'm a child of the 90s, absolutely. Alright, let's keep going on this here before I really show my age going on here. From CNBC, I will not turn my ad blocker off. Dow futures rise more than 200 points as Pfizer BioNTech vaccines get fast track status. Yeah, fast track, we've been hearing that since March. So call me skeptical. Spectacle. Fred Imbert and Yoon Lee provide this for us here. Stock futures extended their gains after Pfizer and German biotech BioNTech SE were granted fast track designation by the FDA for two of the company's 4 vaccine candidates against the coronavirus. Pfizer shares added 2%, BioNTech jumped 5%. The news helped investors look past a record spike in coronavirus cases in Florida. Tech shares also rose in the pre-market. Futures on Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 223 points or 0.8%. The move implied an increase of 244 points at Monday's open. S&P 500 futures added 0.7%. NASDAQ 100 futures contracts rose 0.9%. Florida reported 15,299 new coronavirus cases on Sunday, the highest single-day total for any U.S. state since the pandemic began. Meanwhile, the U.S. has reported more than 60,000 new cases daily for 3 days in a row now, bringing the national total to more than 3 million cases, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. Color me skeptical on those numbers. I'm sorry, but I don't buy that. I don't buy any of that shit. With what they did with the death count the first time around, the fact that there's no second wave anywhere else in the world, well, of course, and I saw this post on Instagram as well. You notice there's no second wave anywhere else in the world because no other place in the world is trying to unseat a president coming up in November. A lot of this is just politics and political theater. And I'm going to come out and say that the cure for the coronavirus, just like the cure for the coronavirus that was protesting Black Lives Matter, the next cure for the coronavirus is going to be the 2020 election. So we'll keep what's going on there. COVID remains a huge problem with cases, hospitalizations, and fatalities all climbing. Vital Knowledge founder Adam Crisafulli said in a note on Sunday, the market continues to absorb all this information relatively well, and this seems to be a function of vaccine hopes. Lower fatality rates versus March/April, the avoidance of wholesale lockdowns, and the lack of a resurgence in the Northeast. Pfizer and BioNTech said they expect to start the next phase of the vaccine trial later this month with 30,000 subjects. The companies expect to have 100 million doses of the vaccine by the end of 2020 and more than 1.2 billion doses by the end of 2021, according to a release. And I bet they go stagnant. Because I don't see a lot of people wanting to take that vaccine. I know a few people in my audience don't want to take it. And I also don't want to take it. But hey, I've already had the coronavirus, so what do I have to worry about? All right, let's get into the news for the day. And this is something that I didn't necessarily want to talk about right away, but I think it bears repeating because it came off of 4chan and it's been on various other forms of social media. Of course, very few people in the mainstreams are talking about this, except for the fact of how silly of a conspiracy theory it was. That's all you're going to get out of the mainstreams here. But I'm going to give my take on this. But first, before we get into my take on this, let's see what Bruce Golding over at the New York Post has to say. Wayfair product listings spark child trafficking conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theory emerged Friday that the Wayfair online store was using the sale of storage cabinets as a cover for child trafficking, which the home decor company immediately denounced as false. A post on the social media website Reddit noted the high cost of the furniture, along with the fact that each item was identified by a female name, as potential evidence of the purported scandal, Newsweek reported. The prices for cabinets called Olivia, Naraya, Samaya, and Yuritsa ranged from $12,699.99 to $14,499.99 each, according to a screenshot posted in the r/conspiracy subreddit. Is it possible Wayfair involved in human trafficking with their WFX utility collection, or are these just extremely overpriced cabinets? Note the names of the cabinets. This makes me sick to my stomach if it's true, user Princess Peach 1987 wrote on Thursday. The post quickly drew more than 700 comments from the subreddit's 1.3 million members, including the assertion that some of the names are missing children. I can't access the cabinets anymore, but I remember a cabinet called Samaya for like 12,000, which is also a missing child from this month. User Coffee is my muse added. I like that username. In a statement, Wayfair said there's of course no truth to these claims. Well, the pedophile said there's no truth to it, so that's the definitive answer. There's no truth to any of this. The products in question are industrial-grade cabinets that are accurately priced, the company said. Recognizing that the photos and descriptions provided by the supplier did not adequately explain the high price point, we have temporarily removed the products from site to rename them and to provide a more in-depth description and photos that accurately depict the product to clarify the price point. In chat conversations with Newsweek, Princess Peach 1987 reportedly said they were involved in a local organization that helped victims of human trafficking and had become suspicious most of the time now. As a result, Princess Peach 1987 also characterized their initial post as less of a direct accusation and more of an effort to see if anyone else had any more details, Newsweek said. There's a lot to unpack in this story. There's a lot going on here, and we also need to reach back all the way back to 2019 if we want to get the full context of what we see going on here, because I don't necessarily think that a lot of this has to do with child trafficking, but I do think that a lot of this has to do with the fact that if we remember correctly, way back last year, and we talked about it on Ed's World, Wyatt was on that week, if I remember correctly. Wayfair got themselves into some hot water last week with their employees. So, if we remember all the way back in 2019, it came out that Wayfair was providing a large amount of beds at cost, at government contract cost, mind you, so they were making a butt ton of money off of this deal. But they were providing a butt ton of beds to the border resorts, especially down in Texas. So, with that being said, and that happening, all of the employees, especially in the Boston area, decided that they were going to have a massive walkout, and they weren't going to stand for it anymore. They were going to shut this all down. They were going to shut Wayfair down because they couldn't be involved in a company that was going to provide beds for the border resorts that were made by the evil Orange Man. Now, I do want to remind everybody how fast that story came out of the news once people started realizing that indeed Barack and Joe were involved in all of this as well, but that in itself is another story for an Ed Talk of another time. But these employees went out, they walked out, they're probably still pissed off with this company, and some of them went back to work because for whatever reason they feel that they can't go out and do anything, and some of the coronavirus market crash came to that as well. If they get fired or the company shuts down, they're going to get a fairly large severance package out of all this. So, but if they quit, they don't get any of that. I honestly, this isn't quite Occam's razor for me, but this does seem like something that somebody from, especially the later part of the millennial generation, would do. I'm looking at this as simply as I can possibly come out with it, and I'm thinking that this was just some rogue programmer that went to the news and said, hey, this is how I'm going to get back at these people for providing beds for the border resorts. This is the only way that I can think of it, Occam's razor, because I don't think Wayfair, especially as high a profile as they are selling child trafficking victims on their website. There are many other avenues at this point in the world that people could do that by without going onto a public website to do it. But I bet you some rogue programmer went in there and changed the names of everything and changed the prices to try and make it look. I think this is a setup and a frame. I really do. Nobody's that dumb to try and do that right out on the middle of a public website. There's nobody that's that dumb. That is like peak stupidity right there. So that's what I'm seeing out of this. That's the explanation I can come up with. The best way I can do it is just some rogue employee that was trying to get back at the company. And it worked, because I know a lot of people are getting ready to either burn their Wayfair furniture, which is stupid, you already paid the money for it, or send it back, or do any number of other things and stop buying from the company. So, yeah, it gave them a bad mark in the news once again. That's the simplest explanation I can come up with. Alright, let's keep going here. This is depressing and sad, no matter what the outcome is. And this is equally depressing and sad. So, from a local affiliate, because nobody in the mainstreams are talking about this, from Fox 59 out of Indianapolis, Indy mother becomes second homicide along downtown canal in 1 week. From Jesse Wells. An Indianapolis mother was shot and killed along the canal early Sunday, marking the second homicide on the canal in a week. According to the victim's family, the shooting started over some racially charged language. The victim, Jessica Doty Whitaker, leaves behind a little boy. She wouldn't have lost her life. She's got a 3-year-old son she loved dearly, said her fiancé, Jose Ramirez. According to Ramirez, he and the victim and 2 other people were hanging out along the canal when someone in the group used a slang version of the N-word. The word prompted a confrontation by a group of strangers. During a brief argument, Ramirez claims the suspect's group shouted Black Lives Matter, and either Whitaker or someone in her group replied that all lives matter. Eventually, the 2 sides separated because they realized they were both armed. The groups then fist bumped and walked away from each other. However, minutes later, Ramirez claims the killer opened fire from a nearby bridge and ran away. It was squashed, and they went up the hill and left, and we thought, but they were sitting on St. Clair waiting for us to come under the bridge, and that's when she got shot, said the victim's fiancé, Jose Ramirez. Jose admits that he returned fire, but didn't hit anyone. He says explaining to Jessica's son Grayson that he'll never see his mom again has been the hardest part for the family. It's hard to tell him his mom is in heaven, and if you want to talk to her, you have to look up and say, "I love you, Mom," said Ramirez. Wow, this is quite heartbreaking. Just 1 week earlier, 2 people were shot in the same Port of Canal. During one of those shootings, a 14-year-old identified as Curtis White Jr. died during what police describe as an attempted armed robbery. Our message is that the canal is still a safe to go, said IMPD Captain Jerry Leary. The IMPD partners with Indiana State Police, the Parks Department, and the Department of Metropolitan Development to patrol different areas along the canal. Police have added security cameras and will increase patrols, especially during the overnight hours. Oh good, the government's putting up more cameras. Just recently, the DMD is hiring 2 overtime officers to work the canal during those times nightly. Said Leary, a combination of all those efforts we hope is going to make a difference, and it can't help to. For their part, Jessica's family simply wants her killer caught. We're going through a lot. The 3-year-old boy doesn't even understand, really, said Ramirez. I just want justice for Jessica and her son and their family. So far, police have not released any suspect information, but anyone with information on the case can still contact Crime Stoppers at 317-262-TIPS. And anybody, I do hope that somebody does come forward with this because, yeah, I can't stand the fact that this little boy is going to have to grow up without his mom. But yes, I mean, peaceful protests we're keeping out here and seeing. And the one thing that came out of this that really got me, I can't believe I don't have this on the stack for tonight. I'm going to have to change this. So we're going to save this one here, but they realize they're both armed. So they're getting ready to go out and rumble. They realize that they're both armed to the teeth, both groups are there, and then they walked away. And then somebody came back and shot back. Don't you think you'd be on guard for that first off? But yeah, these are going well beyond peaceful protests at this point. They keep trying to tell you this is all peaceful protest, but this is far from peaceful protest. So, this is what we have going on in Indiana. A couple stories out of that, and a couple families that are broken because of it. Good job, BLM, and all of you other rioters and protesters out there. I'm going to save that because I got to put that on our stack for tonight because that is in the neck of the woods of my co-host. All right, from Fox News, anti-fascist group seen as playing big role in Portland unrest. Report from Edmund DeMarsh. The Pacific Northwest Youth Liberation Front, a group comprised of anti-capitalist and anti-fascist teens, has been blamed for playing a major role in weeks of unrest unfolding in Portland, a report Sunday said. Mayor Ted Wheeler, a Democrat, took to Twitter late Sunday night to essentially give an update on the city's condition as violent protests continue. Wheeler pointed to one protester who suffered a gruesome injury on Saturday night that prompted the U.S. Marshal Service to investigate, and he appealed the public for calm. We are now more than a month and a half into witnessing nightly violence on our streets, he tweeted. Portland continues to be used as a staging ground for violence night after night. This is causing unprecedented harm to our communities, livelihoods, and Portlanders continue to fear for their safety. My main concern is this, that the continuing violence will lead to further injuries or even deaths. Some users who responded to his tweet implored him to publicly identify the groups behind the unrest. But the Seattle Times identified one of these groups in a lengthy article that is emerging as a persistent military voice in the city. The group reportedly effectively employs social media and even provides protesters with tactical advice. The Portland Police Department did not immediately respond to an after-hours emails from Fox News. The paper reported that the group has anonymous leaders and considers itself anti-fascist and anti-capitalist. One of the goals is to upend the U.S. political system. The paper made clear that the group is not the only one behind organizing these rallies. The group's unverified Twitter account has over 21,000 followers and says it's a decentralized network of autonomous youth, collectives dedicated to a direct action towards liberation. Early Monday, the group tweeted, "The feds and Portland police are very quickly finding out that if they build a fortress and use literal siege tactics, the people will put their fucking fortress under siege." Portland remains a hotbed for violence, while other cities in the U.S. have managed to calm some of the unrest in light of George Floyd's death in police custody in May. Yeah, this is a photo from Oregon here, from security cameras of all the graffiti and everything over there. So I think they're trying to build themselves another autonomous zone, and the Portland police are trying not to have it. But I think these poor guys are winning. I think these poor, dumb people are going to win, and that makes me a little bit sad. But once again, you're going to start seeing flight from some of these cities. Some of these cities that didn't experience the violence in years past are going to start seeing people come out of there and, just let them be taken over by the rioters, because why the hell not? Come on inland, guys. I mean, if you're out on the coast and you're in some of these riot cities, come on inland. We've got a lot of space. Leave your voting behind. Leave your voting and all your policies and everything that fly in Seattle and Portland and Los Angeles. Leave all that shit behind and come on inland and see what the difference is when you don't have to worry about your city being sieged and firebombed every night. So, another autonomous zone is coming, and nobody's going to do anything about it. All right, let's keep going here. From the Daily Wire, criminal investigation expanded into district attorney who charged officers in Rayshard Brooks shooting. From Ryan Saavedra, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation has reportedly expanded its criminal investigation into Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard as new questions emerge about the grand jury subpoenas that Howard's office issued in the case involving the death of Rayshard Brooks. Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr has asked the GBI to expand the scope of its current investigation regarding Howard after Carr learned about subpoenas issued by Howard's office regarding Officer Garrett Rolfe and the use of force against Brooks, who was shot by Rolfe after resisting arrest and firing a taser in the officer's direction during a DUI arrest. Howard issued grand jury subpoenas directing the Atlanta Police Department to turn over its open investigation regarding Garrett Rolfe and the use of force incident. But Fox 5 notes that these grand jury subpoenas were issued while the grand jury was suspended. The grand jury has been suspended since March 13th because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Interesting. The issuing of a grand jury subpoena while there's no grand jury could be an ethical or possible criminal issue, according to legal experts who spoke with the Fox 5. Gable Chino, who is a law professor that specializes in prosecutorial misconduct, told the outlet it would be a violation of criminal law to make a knowingly false statement or misrepresentation in the subpoena, which is a document that has been issued. GBI Director Vic Reynolds said the department was aware of the matter and apparently is looking into it. GBI was already investigating Howard earlier this week over a mysterious salary supplement negotiated between Howard and then Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed that directed $250,000 over a 3-year period into a nonprofit that was run by the DA's office, Fox 5 reports. Howard allegedly took $140,000 from those funds to supplement his own salary. Howard's name gained national attention after he charged Rolfe with felony murder in the case of Rayshard Brooks. The Atlanta Police Department was called to a Wendy's restaurant in Atlanta, Georgia, because Brooks, 27, had fallen asleep behind the wheel of a car while in the drive-thru, which was disrupting the movement of vehicles in line. The interaction between the police and Brooks was mostly calm until the attempted arrest following his breathalyzer, which showed that he was driving while drunk. So, this guy's in some hot water, and a lot of what we're looking at here is part of the reason that we do need to hold these people accountable and remember that the government is not our leaders, they are public servants. Because when they come up and act like leaders, they do shit like this, and they think that they can get away with it because they think they're above the law. They are the law, so they think that they're above the law. And yeah, absolutely, if you're using a grand jury and making false statements out of that, that's a crime. That's going to cause somebody else fun. That's not a victimless crime like smoking a joint or sleeping in the drive-thru. That is a crime. And that is the government overreaching too far. Which was the case when he charged with felony murder anyway. I can believe, but yeah, a lot of stuff going on here. And I mean, you don't hear about Rayshard Brooks anymore. Because the news stopped covering it, because Keisha Lance Bottoms had to go in and get Brian Kemp to come in and call the National Guard in for her because she couldn't control her own city and everything else that was going on with that, and people were dying because of it, including an 8-year-old girl. There's just so much going on here. I can't believe Atlanta's still standing at this point, because I could see counter-protests coming up out of this because of the fact that this is happening and the mayor doesn't want to do anything about it. And now we've got a criminal DA that's both embezzling money and going well above his own scope because it's an election year. So good job on the watchdogs that turned this one over. All right. From Breitbart, the dumbest thing I've heard today. Ford Motor Company employees call for end of police car production. The Ford Motor Company's website featured the automaker's long relationship with law enforcement that dates back 7 decades and includes its tagline for the vehicles it has designed for the men and women in blue: police tested, street proven. But now the wave of social unrest and virtue signaling following the death of George Floyd while in police custody is taking over the corporate world, including Ford, where workers are urging leadership to stop manufacturing cop cars. This despite the fact that Ford expresses pride in its connection to law enforcement, according to the website. Ford introduced the first ever police package in 1950. Over the following decades, we've worked alongside law enforcement agencies with a purpose-built philosophy that continues today. Every vehicle is built with what we call the Ford Police DNA: safety, durability, performance, purpose, built and upfit friendly. Like the officers who drive them, Ford police vehicles are specialized to meet all the needs of communities they serve, providing law enforcement agencies all of the stripes with the ideal tools to get the job done. But now anti-police rhetoric is spilling over into action, taken against not just police officers who have committed crimes, but all men and women in uniform. 800,000 in the United States, according to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. Since the first recorded police death in 1786, there have been more than 22,000 law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty, the memorial website states. But as NBC reported, some Ford employees are complaining about Ford's connection to police. Ford is embroiled in an internal dispute over whether to continue producing vehicles for U.S. law enforcement in light of the broader national debate over police brutality. As many as 100 Ford employees have raised the question in letters to senior executives, as well as during corporate town hall held online. Several company insiders said, confirming the report that first appeared in the Detroit Free Press. Were Ford to pull out of the specialized market, it could have significant ramifications, as the Detroit automaker currently produces about 2/3 of the vehicles used by U.S. law enforcement agencies. Ford Executive Chairman Bill Ford and CEO Jim Hackett issued a public statement last month declaring that the carmaker cannot turn a blind eye to systemic racism, nor accept some of the sense of order that's based on oppression. Detroit automakers in general have taken a number of steps to respond to the crisis. General Motors donated $10 million to groups promoting racial justice and social inclusion, including the NAACP. So, there's a lot going on here. First off, this is cutting into your bottom line, especially if you're making Fords right now, because that's a big chunk of the cars that they make, especially with these flimsy-ass Explorer police interceptors that they're making. I know they stopped doing the Taurus police interceptor, or I believe they did. I have not seen a confirmation of that, but I've seen a story saying that they stopped doing the Taurus version of it. But the Explorer version is probably one of the most manufactured car because it is flimsy. It's not a full frame unit. That's part of the reason they kept the Crown Vic as a police interceptor for much longer than they were making the Crown Vic as a passenger car. Because it was as slow as it was, as underperforming as it was, it was tough as nails. And it was full frame, so you could take it back to the police shop after you went onto a high-speed chase and busted the shit out of it, and stick it on a frame straightener, and get it back to working order and get plenty more use out of it. These things are flimsy as crap, so they're going to keep making more of them. And more, and more, and more, and more. They're just going to keep making these things. But if the union workers don't want to support this, which I believe that there's going to be some other political underlying thing for this, then they can go home, as far as I can tell, because they don't want to make money anymore. But I mean, it's trickled down into absolutely everything. Absolutely. And the Taurus Police Interceptor was probably, in spite of the fact that they stopped doing full frame, was probably one of the better cars that they put out there, especially for the police line. Because, I mean, the Charger is a piece of crap. I'm sorry. And GM barely has an entry into this. They've got something they imported from Australia that's rear-wheel drive, and other than that, it's a piece of crap. But, I mean, they did, in spite of taking the full frame out of it, they did put a lot of thought into what the Taurus Police Interceptor would be. All-wheel drive, twin-turbo V6, a lot of power, a lot of ability to get there and respond to an emergency if need be. And not necessarily just a crime in progress, but like I said, there's always a police officer first on site if somebody falls down and gets hurt. I don't know how it is in every other state, but when they send out an ambulance or a fire truck, they send a police car out too. Because that way he can do crowd control or make sure and look into an investigation if there was foul play into any of this. So, I mean, this is not just criminal justice that goes along with this. But once again, if that's what they want to do, if the union workers want to go to, I would have a hard time buying another Ford truck after that, but I'm going to finish paying for the one that I have and then decide what to do after that. But man, I would have a hard time buying another one if that's what they're going to do, if they're just going to bow to the woke mob. All right, let's keep going here. From Fox News, Senator Kennedy bashes the Breathe Act proposed by squad members in an effort to compete in the woke Olympics. From Charles Creets, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana told The Story Wednesday that law enforcement reform legislation announced earlier this week by Representatives Rashida Tlaib and Ayanna Pressley is clearly a serious effort to compete in the woke Olympics. I would give it a 9.7, Kennedy, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, told host Trace Gallagher. As an American who feels gratitude, not hatred for my company, the only way I know how to improve their bill is with the shredder. Like the paper thing or the dude from the Turtles. Either way. The legislation, known as the Breathe Act, calls for the federal funding of local police and federal agencies to be reduced, and the difference diverted to pay for healthcare, education, environmental, and housing programs. It would also eliminate federal programs and agencies used to finance immigration and customs enforcement, and the controversial Department of Defense 1033 program, which transfers excess military equipment to civilian law enforcement agencies. Other provisions, including abolishing surveillance. No, hold on a sec. I want to go back to this. Now, this has been a sticking point with me for a while. The Department of Defense 1033 program, transferring excess military equipment to civilian law enforcement agencies. Now, one of the things that we do have to keep in mind, and this goes along, because for right now, Schedule 1 is still a thing, which means people are still trafficking drugs all around the country. And this goes the same with children or any other vice you can have out there. They are protected with armaments, and the criminals that are committing these crimes, which, once again, too many laws, and some of these crimes are victimless, but the criminals that are committing these crimes, which are currently illegal, are increasingly militarizing their defense of themselves and hurting innocent people in the process. So if they're going to militarize, then the people that are going to enforce the laws that are currently on the books, which some of which need to go away, don't get me wrong on that, some of these laws need to go away, but as long as they're being enforced, in order to ensure safety of human beings, which, my God, they are trying so hard to try and make these people seem like they're not human beings, but to ensure the safety of human beings, they do need to have some military level equipment. Now, I agree that they probably shouldn't be carrying an SMG on their hip as they're going out and doing traffic patrol, or responding to a fire, or a broken leg, or anything else like that. They probably shouldn't have military equipment there, but when they are going onto one of these big child trafficking rings or something else like that, it would probably be a good idea to actually have some level of military equipment in there, because you know that the people defending the trafficking ring are going to have that kind of military equipment. If we got rid of some of the laws, we could get rid of the DoD 1033 program, but something tells me that these people in Congress are not going to start getting rid of some of these laws. All right. Let's keep going here. Other provisions, including abolishing surveillance tactics disproportionately used to target minority communities, electronic monitoring, including ankle monitors, smartphone apps, and other tools, ending civil asset forfeiture, ending the three strikes law, and repealing laws that criminalize illegal immigration. Now, the three strikes law, that I can get behind, but for the most part, it does look like it's what we predicted, what the Breathe Act was going to be. It was going to be a fuck ton of pork that the Democrats wanted to try and push through their little pet projects, like environmental, Green New Deal, abolish ICE. This is a pork-laden bill. And there's a reason that they didn't want to go through Tim Scott's bill, because it didn't have enough pork in it. So, yeah, this is just an absolute pork-laden bill, and it needs to be done, and we need to get some of these people out of Congress, especially the ones, A, the ones who are too stupid to be there, and B, the ones who have been sitting there forever and plan to sit there forever. So, good on Senator Kennedy for coming out with this and bringing this to light to everybody here. Alright, from the Daily Wire once again. Surgeon General on prior anti-mask statements. When we learn more, our recommendations change, from Eric Quintanar. During a CBS News appearance on Sunday, U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams defended remarks he made on the show back in March, when he was still cautioning people not to wear face masks because, when it comes to getting infected with the coronavirus, they do not work for the general public. It's important for people to understand that once upon a time, we prescribed cigarettes for asthmatics, and leeches for cocaine, and heroin for people as medical treatments. When we learn better, we do better, said Adams, who was wearing a face mask to communicate the need to wear masks, which the available evidence also suggests is a good idea. Are you saying that at the time you did not know because the CDC in February was looking at asymptomatic transmission of the virus? Responded CBS News anchor Margaret Brennan, who previously pointed out that the administration's mask guidance changed in April. We were looking at that, said Adams, but the CDC, the WHO, and even in May, there was a New England Journal of Medicine article that still disputed whether or not masks were effective. Since the beginning of the pandemic, continued Adams, public health officials have learned that up to 50% of people who can spread this disease spread it without having symptoms, and then they changed their mind 6 weeks ago. The Surgeon General used this informational bit as an example of why recommendations can change, because what we know can change. After acknowledging the importance of wearing masks or face coverings, Brennan pushed back against Adams, asking whether he thought the mixed messaging has created the opportunity for confusion. As Adams explained his need to correct the messaging, Brennan asked bluntly, "Were you saying that then because there just wasn't enough equipment?" Fact check, probably true. Adams responded, "I was saying that then because everything we knew about coronaviruses before that point told us that people were not likely to spread when they were asymptomatic. So the science at the time suggested there was not a high degree of asymptomatic spread. We learned more." And it's funny how quickly that asymptomatic story got buried and you never heard about it again, but sure enough, they're out there all the time trying to come out and tell you that, yeah, it's time. Oh, you have to wear the mask because you could be a super spreader even if you don't have symptoms. Even if you don't know you have it, you could be a super spreader. Fuck, people in the David Hogg tweet thread yesterday were saying that. And that was just debunked by the CDC last month. Fact of the matter is, they don't fucking know what's going on. They have no idea what's going on with any of this. And the face mask is a form of control. And it's a form of identifying who are the proper people, the safe people, or anything else, and who are the dissenters. This is getting into some real Orwellian shit that we see going on here. So keep this in mind as we go forward here, and we'll move on to the next story. From Fox News, China announces sanctions against Rubio cruise over Uyghur Muslims, from David Arrow. China on Monday announced sanctions against a number of U.S. officials, including Senators Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, in retaliation for legislation intended to punish senior Chinese officials over Beijing's alleged treatment of the minority Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, according to multiple reports. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying said the sanctions against the U.S. officials would begin on Monday. The Republican senators, both prominent critics of China, were listed by Hua as targets of the corresponding sanctions. Others include Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom Sam Brownback, U.S. Representative Chris Smith, and the Congressional Executive Commission on China, which monitors human rights and submits an annual report to President Trump and Congress, according to Reuters. The U.S. actions seriously interfere in China's internal affairs, seriously violate the basic norms of international relations, and seriously damage Sino-U.S. relations, Hua told reporters during the daily briefing. China will make further responses based on how the situation develops. How can you sanction specific senators or specific people? And, well, I understand why they're only sanctioning specific people, because if they sanction the U.S. would say, fuck you, and drive their economy into nothing. And they know it. China does not, as many people as they have, as many buyers as they have, and as much manufacturing as they have, they do not have the ability to throw a sanction against the U.S., even as rough as we are right now. They don't have the ability to do so. So, they're going to try, though. They're going to try and make a statement, and it's going to fall flat. All right, let's keep going here. Another one from the Daily Wire. Last one from the Daily Wire, I should say. Ocasio-Cortez, New York City crime surge may be due to people being scared to pay their rent. Don't have jobs, from Ryan Saavedra. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez claimed on Sunday that the surge in crime in New York City is happening because people are scared to pay their rent and because of high unemployment numbers due to the pandemic. Ocasio-Cortez made the remarks and other misleading statements during a Zoom video call that was posted to Twitter by The Hill. Ocasio-Cortez claimed without evidence that the recent $1 billion in budgetary cut by the New York Police Department wasn't really real. So why is this uptick in crime happening? Ocasio-Cortez asked. Well, let's think about it. Do we think this has to do with the fact there's record unemployment in the United States right now? Get the fact that people are at a level of economic desperation that we've not seen since the Great Depression. Maybe this has to do with the fact that people aren't paying their rent and are scared to pay their rent. And so they go out and they need to feed their children and they don't have money, so you maybe have to. They're put in a position where they might feel like they either need to shoplift or some bread or go hungry that night. Maybe it's the fact that unemployment provisions have not been given to everyone, Ocasio-Cortez claimed. Maybe it's because of the fact that some people still haven't gotten their stimulus checks yet. Ocasio-Cortez's suggestion that the increase in crime is simply people stealing bread to try and feed their families ignores the widespread looting of luxury stores that has happened in the city during the recent riots. It also ignores the fact that New York City Democrat Mayor Bill de Blasio resisted calls from top Democrats and Republicans to deploy the National Guard to restore order and stop the violence and looting. Cortez's remarks about the increasing crime rate also fails to address the fact that a lot of the increase in crime that is garnering headlines is an increase in violent crime, including murders and shootings. For example, shootings last month skyrocketed 130% compared to June of 2019. Yeah, and no, I mean, To an extent, I could get behind the idea that they're looting luxury stores in order to get the bread for their family if they were going out and selling the stuff that they bought out on the black market for next to nothing, but that's not happening either. They're stealing that 60-inch TV and they're hanging it on their wall. But she's in here, she's got the narrative, and she's going to try and hold on to it for as long as she can, because it's the only way that her party can try and stay in power. Speaking of her party staying in power, I hope Seawall's here for this one here, because there's going to be a visceral reaction in the live chat if he hears me say this. From CNN, analysis from Harry Enton. Texas is a swing state in 2020, new polls reveal. New CBS YouGov polls show President Donald Trump is in trouble in 3 states he won in 2016. He's tied with former Vice President Joe Biden in Arizona, 46% to 46%, a state he won by 4 points in 2016. Trump's down 48% to 42% in Florida, a state he took by a point in 2016. But it's the 3rd state, Texas, where the eye-popping result comes from. It's Trump 46 to Biden's 45, as well as within any margin of error. It's pretty clear looking at the data that Texas is a swing state in the 2020 election. The 2020 campaign could be the first time Democrats capture the Lone Star State in presidential elections since 1976. The CBS YouGov poll is not an outlier over the last month. There have been 8 polls released publicly since the beginning of June. The result is that Biden and Trump are basically tied, with Biden up by a mere 0.3 points in Texas. Importantly, and unlike in other states, the polls in Texas have not overestimated Democrats over the last few cycles. If anything, Democrats actually slightly outperformed their final polls in 2016 presidential race and the 2018 Senate races. Things may change the closer we get to the election, but Texas really is competitive at this point. Texas has gotten progressively more competitive during Trump's time as candidate and office holder. A big statewide victory has eluded Democrats, though many races have come within single digits for the first time in a generation. In fact, the state seemed, if anything, to move to the left in 2018, as Democrats were able to achieve wins in some key congressional races. A Biden win would be a manifestation of that trend on the statewide level. 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton lost Texas by 9 points. She was the first Democratic presidential candidate to lose the state by only single digits since the 1990s. If you look nationally, you see Biden is up about 10 points compared to Clinton's 2-point popular vote win. If you shift the Texas result by 8 points, he should be down just a point to Trump. There are reasons to think that Biden could be doing even better than this 8-point shift would imply. In 2018, Democrat Beto O'Rourke came within 3 points of knocking off Senate Republican Ted Cruz and was the best Democratic performance in a Texas Senate race since 1988. It wasn't just O'Rourke who came close. The Democratic candidates for Attorney General and Lieutenant Governor finished within 5 points of their Republican opponents. As I noted last year, the reason the Democrats are doing so well in Texas is a shift among college-educated white voters. You see this best result in the suburbs of Austin, Dallas, and Houston, where O'Rourke did disproportionately better than Democratic Senate did 6 years prior. Indeed, Texas's white voter population is very well educated. One calculation by the New York Times' Nate Cohn reveals a little more than 42% of the 2020 likely white voters in Texas have a college degree. That's the 13th highest in the nation and the most in any state Trump carried in 2016. So, yeah. They are trying to come out and they're trying to, well, first off, this is going to bite the Democrats in the ass so hard this year if they try and do this the same way they did in 2016. Oh, Trump is going to lose Texas. Oh, well, it's all over. You better not even bother. Go in, get ready to be in your shackles forever. They tried to do this in 2016 to try and suppress the vote, and people came out in record numbers to vote for Trump. People have been coming out in record numbers to vote for Trump on the primary in 2020 in almost every primary state. Trump has had record primary numbers, and he's running unopposed in the primary. Yeah, Bill Weld was nothing, and Joe Walsh is still just an idiot. So he was running unopposed, and people were still coming out in record numbers to come and vote for him, and they're going to come out and try and tell me that Texas is going to be a swing state. I'm leaning toward the possibility that Trump could win the popular vote. It's still going to be a long shot because there's so much of the popular vote comes out of California itself, but it's getting harder and harder for me to deny that fact that it could happen. So, especially with Joe Biden running too, that's the other thing that goes up about it. I mean, once again, you know that if you vote for Biden, you vote for his vice president, because that man does not have enough mental acuity to make it. And I know a lot of people, especially the baby boomers, the elders, who have voted Democrat in every election since they were 18, who can't bring themselves to pull the ticket for Biden with everything else that's going on. Now, the progressives, the college kids, are going to do it in droves, and they're going to come out in droves to do so. But he's lost a lot of the older vote, and a lot of them aren't going to vote for Trump, but they're going to leave the top of the ticket blank. I can see that coming, or just not come out. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, they are trying to tell you that Texas is going blue. It's going to be a blue Texas since Kennedy. All right, let's keep going here. So I got a couple things on mail-in voting. One from ABC News, and then one on this West Virginia case. As ballots pile up in the mail, a potential nightmare looms on election night. The potential chaos could make Florida in 2000 look like a garden party, from Brad Mielke, Kendall Carson, and Alyssa Wiersema. New York's polls closed nearly three... you guys are seeing that too, right? New York's polls closed nearly 3 ago. I think there's a word missing in there. But many candidates still don't know whether they've won because New York City is still counting ballots that arrived in the mail. These votes would be an afterthought in most years. In fact, New York, which is typically far more reliant on in-person voting, state law requires a week-long delay before counting absentee ballots. But this year, amid widespread worries of COVID-19 spreading at polling places, the numbers of mail-in ballots is surging far faster than the state's ability to count them. Elections experts are increasingly convinced that the surge and the national patchwork method of handling it could lead to a constitutional crisis in November. Professor Charles Stewart III, director of MIT Election Data and Science, said he is concerned with the confusion could last for a couple weeks, maybe longer. The resulting acrimony, he said, could make Florida in 2000 look like a garden party. Every state processes ballots that arrive in the mail, but numbers can vary widely. In Oregon and Colorado, elections are conducted almost entirely by mail. But in many others, the absentee ballots are reserved for voters who can't otherwise get to a polling place, a number usually too small to swing an election. But that's changed because of the fake pandemic. In Manhattan in 2016, there were approximately 7,000 presidential primary absentee voters, said Sarah Steiner, a former member of the New York Board of Elections, who is now an election law attorney. And you had Hillary and Bernie, that was a competitive primary. This year, the number of absentee primary votes in Manhattan rose past 121,000. In many cases, states have actively promoted mail-in ballots, hoping to mitigate potential viral outbreaks at polling places, but not the Walmart, the grocery store, or the protests. For the first time, Nevada sent a primary ballot to every active registered voter, a system California plans to adopt in November. Other states, including Georgia, sent forms with which voters could request an absentee ballot. In 2016, a quarter of ballots cast in the general were absentee or mail-in ballots. This year, the University of Florida political science professor Michael McDonald expects that share to double, whether counties are ready or not. When we called up a county in Alabama, for example, he said you could hear him opening up a filing drawer, getting a manila envelope, counting, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mail ballots. They've never had to run an election like this, and we still haven't seen some of these states run elections under COVID. Even in states that have conducted primaries, even with federal aid, the volume of mail-in ballots has led to some of those elections being labeled disasters. On June 9th, around Atlanta, many voters who couldn't stand on their feet for 3 hours gave up and went home. Others brought folding chairs. What a mess, said Marilyn Marks, executive director of the Coalition for Good Governance, a group that advocates for election transparency. If you had asked me before June 9th, I would have told you I'm not worried about mail-in ballots. That changed, she said, when she saw lines spilling out of Georgia polling places and onto the streets. The long wait times have been chalked up to poll workers refusing to show up because of COVID-19, delayed poll openings, and issues with voting machines, all true, but also compounded by the huge number of voters who applied for absentee ballots and never received them, Mark said. There were probably 40,000, 50,000 voters who had requested an absentee ballot who never received it, said Georgia House Minority Leader Bob Trammell. Those voters, largely concentrated in key counties, began arriving in person to the polls. Poll workers then had to make a call to verify voters had never received one. Yeah, this is just a mess, and I really do feel like people are going to get the mail-in ballots and also are going to go vote in person in several places. This is just an absolute fuck story. And they're going to try and change the technology on the fly in an election year with no warning and hope everything goes well. I mean, I've seen it go well. Like when we did our last charity stream for Freedom Scoop. I have seen it go well, but that was a lot of luck. When we changed technology right in the middle of the show, that was a lot of luck, I can tell you that. But now they're going to try and change the technology across the country and try and run an election that way. Speaking of mail-in ballots, mail carrier in West Virginia pleads guilty to attempted election fraud. From WSAZ News Channel 3. A West Virginia postal carrier has pleaded guilty to altering mail-in requests for absentee voter ballots. Thomas Cooper entered the plea on Thursday in federal court in Elkins. Cooper was charged in May after 8 mail-in requests for absentee voter ballots had their party affiliations altered. Cooper held a postal contract to pick up mail ballots in 3 towns in which the voters live. An investigation found 5 of the ballot requests were changed from Democrat to Republican with black ink pen. On the other 3 requests, the Voters' Party was not changed, but the word Republican was later circled in black ink. For the previous story about this case, click here. I probably wasn't supposed to read that out loud. But, once again, and this is the big thing with mail-in voting, if this had gone the other direction, and I said this when I first started talking about this, if this had gone the other direction, you wouldn't have heard a word about it. You wouldn't have heard fuck word one about the fact that this happened. In fact, if you had heard a word about it, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would get up on her little soapbox and say, "This is a conspiracy theory and voter fraud never happens." The only reason this is being talked about is because it went from D to R. But it also shows the fact that, yes, this guy pleaded guilty. This happened. And they're going to continue to try and tell you that it never happens. All right, we read now from The Hill, and then I've got one more general interest story, and we'll do something that restores my faith in humanity. Trump says he'll sign order with road to citizenship for DACA recipients from Rafael Bernal. President Trump said Friday he intends to sign an executive order on immigration within the next month that will include a road to citizenship for recipients of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals DACA program. Why am I getting video? In an interview with Telemundo anchor Jose Diaz-Balart, Trump blamed Democrats for walking away from a deal with DACA and said the Supreme Court's decision last month blocking his administration's plan to end the Obama-era program gave him tremendous power. The deal was done. DACA is going to be just fine. We're putting it in. It's going to be just fine. And I'm going to be, over the next few weeks, signing an immigration bill that a lot of people don't know about. You have breaking news, but I'm signing a big immigration bill, Trump told Diaz-Balart. Is that an executive order? The anchor asked. I'm going to do a big executive order. I have the power to do it as president, and I'm going to make DACA a part of it, Trump responded. But we put it in. We're probably going to be taking it out. We're working on the legal complexities right now, but I'm going to be signing a very major immigration bill as executive order, which the Supreme Court now, because the DACA decision, has given me the power to do that. No, what I'm going to do is Asked whether the executive order would provide temporary relief for DACA recipients, Trump said its scope would be much wider. No, what I'm going to do is that they're going to be part of a much bigger bill on immigration. It's going to be a very big bill, the best bill, and merit-based bill, and it will include DACA. And I think people are going to be very, very happy. But one of the aspects of the bill is going to be DACA. We're going to have a road to citizenship, he added. Which is what I have been saying since I first started talking about DACA, When I first made my first DACA bill, even when I was still blogging and I made my first DACA post, we're at the point right now that these people have been here since children. They've been working, paying taxes, contributing to the economy, don't know their own home, barely know their home language, and are contributing members to society. And they have to keep their noses clean in order to stay in this country under the DACA program. Because if they have one crime, they're out. And if you gave them path to citizenship right now, you would win this election and the next. It's like Trump listens to this show. It absolutely is, because I've been saying it right from the beginning. It's like he listens to this show, and he took my advice finally. Give them a path to citizenship. Take it away. Take the ability away from the Democrats to give them the path to citizenship, because they want to hold these people in limbo forever. In immigration limbo, where they're neither... It's Schrodinger's immigration is what it is. They're neither legal or illegal as long as they're in the DACA program. But as long as they're in the program, then they can be used as a club to beat Republicans with from time to come. You end the program, and you get these people into the country, and all of a sudden, now you've taken that club away from the Democrats. I've been saying this for 3 years, that this is what needs to be done. Because all they are is a political pawn as long as they're in the program. That's it. Alright. So, after that, I've got one general interest story, and then we'll do something that restores my faith in humanity. From CNN Business, Soda Bombs and Pizza Security, the lessons of making a car for Domino's. From Matt McFarland. In 2012, Domino's enlisted the automaker Local Motors, where Nicholas DePere worked to reinvent pizza delivery. He spent the next 18 months obsessed with making the ultimate pizza delivery car, and by the end of it, he discovered that the best solution wasn't about the pizza. Not really, at least, if you want to make money, focus on the driver. Local Motors is an automotive company that focuses on collaborative and crowdsourced design, so DePere tapped his online community of auto enthusiasts for ideas. He befriended pizza drivers at his local Domino's. He visited car dealerships with pizza carrying bags to see how well they fit in different vehicles. He learned that some pizza delivery drivers didn't want franchise-owned car because they'd be reimbursed for the wear and tear on their own vehicles, resulting in a larger paycheck. It wasn't just an issue of designing the ultimate pizza delivery vehicle. He had to make the drivers want to deliver pizzas in it, and not just because the car looked cool. DePere quickly realized the best way to help everyone involved, the customer, the driver, Domino's, the franchise owner, was to hyper-focus on the driver. If we could help the driver shave at least 30 seconds off each delivery, that would equate to an extra $3,000 to $5,000 a year, DePere wrote this week on Twitter. Less time spent on each delivery meant more deliveries and thus more pizzas per shift, enabling faster deliveries for the customer while boosting income for everyone on the business side. Ultimately, Domino's and DePere went to retrofit an existing vehicle rather than taking up the costly task of building a new vehicle from scratch. They chose the Chevy Spark because of its size, warranty, price, and fuel economy, DePere said. The upgrade proceeded with the input of car enthusiasts in more than 50 countries. They built an oven in the vehicle with an exterior door for easy pizza loading and unloading, heated by the front passenger seat warmer, which was stripped out. Instead of a second seat, the car had a custom-built tray that held the pizzas and side dishes and drinks. He had learned from drivers that it was tough to keep a 2-liter bottle of soda stationary in a typical car. Fact check true. If you're a delivery driver and you hand a family 2 pies and a soda that's shaken up, you're basically handing them a soda bomb, DePere said in an interview with CNN Business. If they open the soda and it sprays on them, will they order from Domino's again? And they may tip the driver less if they see them again. Initially, DePere and the online community believed the car should have a built-in GPS for navigation, but conversations with drivers revealed they didn't want that. Typing in an address took time. Drivers felt it was better to learn the neighborhoods they worked in. The DXP is kind of a cool little car. Of course, Domino's is insanely protective of the car and the equipment in. So, a few months ago, actually I think this was last year because I read this while I was still working at Madison. I did, because I was talking to one of my coworkers about it at the time. Last year I read an article about a guy who got one of these DXP cars from from an insurance auction. It had been wrecked. So the guy got the car back. It still had all the equipment intact. Domino's never had the chance to strip it out. I don't know if they even knew about it. They never came to go strip it out. So the guy bought it from the salvage yard as an insurance and restored it. Restored it back to full working condition. He's the only private citizen that has a DXP, as far as I know at this point, with the actual equipment in it. Now, he stripped all the Domino stuff off of it because then it's not copyright infringement. But it's still got the oven in it, the seat warmer, the seat tray, the 2-liter bottle. I mean, for him, this is a one-of-a-kind car. But yeah, Domino's was very protective of this little thing. But it was a cool little car, too. I wouldn't mind actually getting in and giving one a little spin just to see what it's like. All right, so that's it for news. And now I've got something here that restores my faith in humanity from the Daily Wire. I believe prayer works. Rush Limbaugh gives good news health update from Amanda Prestigiacomo. On Monday, legendary conservative talk show host Rush Limbaugh announced to his massive audience that some positive developments in his fight against advanced stage lung cancer. Using baseball analogies to explain his positive response to a third round of treatment, Limbaugh said he finally got on base and stole second, citing the power of prayer for his success at the movement. It was in late January that we learned of the diagnosis, Limbaugh explained. That means we learned of a really tough opponent, so it was time to go up to bat, and time to walk to the plate, bat in hand, and that's exactly what happened. And my first 2 at-bats were horrible. My first 2 at-bats struck out, nothing to show for it. The first 2 attempts to deal with the cancer failed, he continued. One was a targeted therapy of clinical trial drugs, which worked but nearly killed me in the process. And so we had to get off those, but that at-bat showed me I could hit the pitch. I wasn't going to strike out, I was at least able to make contact. We had some hope that there would be a remedy. Likewise, Limbaugh said, the second at-bat was a total and complete failure. I struck out on 3 pitches, did not even make contact. So now I'm in the bottom of the 9th. I'm 0 for 2, he set the scene. I've not reached first base. I didn't coax a walk out of anybody. I didn't get a hit, much less a double or a triple. But on his third treatment, the 69-year-old outlined, I managed to get on base. I hit a solid single and then stole second. So, I mean, Limbaugh's doing good. And the fact of the matter is that there have been a lot of people that were praying for him, which, I mean, that's great. That really is great for him. And the fact that he's doing so well off of this, and this will inspire other people to come out and say the prayer for the people that they otherwise wouldn't. And most of all, and this is the biggest thing, is this does rehumanize Rush Limbaugh. The left at this point, especially when they found out about the cancer diagnosis, did everything that they could to try and dehumanize the guy, to try and say that it's good, that we're going to take a demon out of the world, an animal out of the world. They tried to make him into an animal, into a beast. And the fact of the matter is that there's been enough good sentiment in this world, enough people like this guy enough, that they can rehumanize him. Now, we're going to see dehumanization a lot more in the next election cycle, and even further down into this. People would rather look at you as a beast that they can kill at will than an actual human being and an actual comrade that they have. And for all of us to come together now, we do need to come together and try and rehumanize each other, because we are human. We all go home to our families and our loved ones, no matter what our political views are. I don't even consider Hillary or Bill to be a demon at this point, and they've done way more evil things than Limbaugh has. But they're still human. They still go home to each other, mysteriously, and Chelsea and the grandchildren. The world has humanized Rush Limbaugh again, as much as they tried to make him into an animal. He's been great for the movement. He's been great to get us off the liberal bent in the news and help to rise the independent media. I don't agree with him all the time, but he is still human. He's still a great guy. And this story, the story of prayer and the fact that he's doing better because of the prayer, restores my faith in humanity. So that's going to be it for the day. Make sure you come back, later on tonight when we will have 2 more hours of content as I welcome Elaine back for the RedNet Show number 2. Come back and check us out. And we will be opening the D-Live chest tonight as well, so make sure, especially if you want those D-Live lemons, come on in and come and check us out over on the D-Live, because we look forward to having you and look forward to talking about the news. We've got a lot of 2020 news, of course, coming up in here. Black Lives Matter. We've got some surprise stupidity, presidential races, congressional races, just a lot of stuff going on here. So I'd love to have you. Come back and check us out. Otherwise, we will be back here tomorrow. Until then, on either case, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.